In the late 1600s, two men on opposite ends of Europe cracked the code of the cosmos. Without ever meeting, they discovered the same thing: calculus. It was the mathematics of motion, of change, the very heartbeat of nature itself. But with genius comes pride, and with pride comes war. What began as silent triumphs became accusations. As the ink dried, alliances were formed, reputations shattered. This was no ordinary dispute. This was a war, fought with letters, egos, and institutions. This is the story of two minds destined to collide, a story of invention, ambition, and betrayal. This is the Calculus War. The year was 1666. The Great Plague emptied cities, shut universities, and silenced the world. But in a small manor in Woolsthorpe, a 23-year-old recluse was filling that silence with ideas that would echo for centuries. Isaac Newton, brilliant, awkward, and utterly unknown, retreated into the countryside with no teacher, no mentor, only questions. How does light bend? What keeps the planets in orbit? What force pulls the apple down? He didn't have the tools to answer them, so he invented them. Fluxions, he called them. Not numbers or static quantities, but things that flow. For Newton, motion wasn't just a part of nature, it was nature. In that lonely year, he laid the foundation for optics, gravity, and the raw bones of what we now call calculus. Calculus, as Newton envisioned it, wasn't symbolic, it was physical. He imagined the curve not as a shape, but as a path traced over time. A falling apple, a rising planet, the arc of a cannonball. All became problems of change, and with fluxions, his new tool, he could describe how that change happened moment by moment. X and Y, his fluxions, measured how things flowed. To Newton, the world was a machine governed by unseen forces. His calculus was the language of that machine. Across the Channel, another mind was catching fire. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, lawyer, diplomat, philosopher, mathematician. He had no apple, no falling body, no stormy exile, just logic. He sought a universal language, a calculus not of nature, but of thought. And in 1675, while sketching problems of curve lengths and slopes, he wrote a simple symbol. From Latin, summa, the sum of infinitely small things. It was elegant, consistent, and most importantly, scalable. Leibniz's calculus was not a tool to model the world, it was a language that could build it. They solved the same problems, but spoke in different tongues. Newton approached calculus through the lens of geometry and physics, a visual, mechanical world. Leibniz approached it through logic, symbols, and syntax, a world of systems. To Newton, Leibniz's notation seemed dangerously abstract. To Leibniz, Newton's fluxions were clumsy and vague. Neither man knew it yet. But soon the question wouldn't just be how calculus worked, it would be who invented it first. And that would change everything. In 1676, two men, Newton and Leibniz, began a polite exchange of letters. The tone, friendly. The content, cautious. Newton hinted at secrets but revealed little. Leibniz asked clever questions and kept records. Behind the pleasantries, both men knew they were circling the same treasure. And when Leibniz published a full account of his differential calculus in 1684, Newton noticed. He didn't accuse, not yet. But he began to prepare. For a time, both men worked in their own domains. Newton's Principia Mathematica reshaped physics, but it made little mention of Leibniz. Meanwhile, on the continent, Leibniz's notation became standard among scholars. The British followed Newton's fluxions. The Europeans followed Leibniz's differentials. A schism was forming, and in the quiet margins of their letters, distrust was starting to bloom. By 1700, Newton's silence had turned to suspicion. Through allies and letters, he began to imply what he dared not yet say, that Leibniz had stolen his method. The first blows came indirectly. Through students, colleagues and pamphlets, Leibniz, shocked and insulted, struck back. The polite veil of scientific exchange was about to rip. And when Newton finally published his own work on fluxions in 1704, he was no longer just the discoverer of gravity. He was the general of a war. What began as discovery turned into dogma. England claimed Newton as the rightful father. The continent rallied around Leibniz. The Royal Society launched an inquiry, one Newton himself secretly authored. Their conclusion was clear. Newton discovered calculus first, Leibniz merely borrowed. But truth by this point no longer mattered. What mattered was legacy. In 1712, the world's most prestigious scientific body convened a secretive committee, officially, to determine the true inventor of calculus. Unofficially, it was a trial, with no jury, no defense, and only one possible outcome. Newton, now president of the Royal Society, was no longer just a mathematician. He was an institution unto himself, and this committee, it bore his fingerprints. He had handpicked its members, loyal allies, all English. The verdict was never in doubt, but Newton, ever precise, would make sure it was absolute. Across the Channel, Leibniz waited. Not for judgment, he already knew the outcome, but for fairness, for honor. But in England, he had become a pariah. The whispers of plagiarism had grown louder, and now they would be carved into official record. It was not just rejection, it was erasure. His life's work dismissed without rebuttal, without due process. The committee's final report was published, a thunderous decree wrapped in scholarly Latin. It accused Leibniz of having seen Newton's methods and borrowed them, without attribution, without honor. It wasn't just a verdict, it was propaganda, a national triumph for Britain, and a public humiliation for a man who had once stood among the world's intellectual titans. The world took it as truth. What they didn't know was this: Newton had written the report, a jury of his choosing, a sentence of his design, and the verdict signed with silence. In Leibniz's final years, few came to visit. He died in 1716, largely ignored. Even the Royal Academy did not send a representative to his funeral. Few came to mourn him. Even fewer remembered his war. In his final years, he wrote endlessly, not to prove he was first, but to prove he had thought independently. No court heard him, no nation defended him. The man who gave the world its most elegant mathematical language was buried as a plagiarist. Newton won. His name was etched into coins, monuments and mines. He lived long enough to watch his rivals fade. But what haunted him was never Leibniz, it was uncertainty. Had he shared too little, waited too long? Had paranoia buried truth alongside ego? When Newton died in 1727, he was buried with kings, but in the silence of that final moment, even the greatest mind wondered what might have been. Today we teach calculus with Leibniz's symbols and Newton's concepts. We tell both their stories, but rarely the full one. Did Newton discover it first? Did Leibniz reinvent it alone? Or did the truth vanish in the shadow of their pride? The calculus war wasn't just about mathematics, it was about what we value more: the truth or the teller. After their deaths, a curious thing happened. Mathematicians stopped choosing sides. They chose utility. From Newton, they kept the method of limits and motion. From Leibniz, they kept the notation. Out of rivalry, a fusion was born, and calculus became something neither man fully envisioned: a universal language for nature itself. History is not written by the victors, it's written by those with the chalk. In England, Newton was a prophet. In Germany, Leibniz became a symbol. In classrooms, students learned their names, but rarely their flaws. Their feud became footnote. Their genius became gospel. Centuries later, the debate still echoes. Who came first? Did one see the other's work? Did it even matter? Historians dug into the letters, the dates, the gaps. They found no smoking gun, just a truth too human for black and white. Two minds, one idea, and a rivalry shaped as much by pride as by brilliance. Today, calculus drives our world. From the stars to the cells, from engines to economics, every time a rocket launches, every time a machine learns, it echoes Newton and Leibniz, not in feud, not in silence, but in function. Their war gave us a tool. That tool gave us the future.